Thank you for joining us for a special edition of LA County Close-Up. I'm your host, Naiba Reynoso. Earthquakes have once again rattled nerves, ringing the alarm to be ready when the big one strikes. This episode is dedicated to disaster preparedness. We'll hear from the experts, including the new director of the county's Office of Emergency Management, and teach you how to create your own survival kit. But first, let's go behind the scenes for a tour of the Emergency Operations Center. When disaster strikes, the Office of Emergency Management is ready to respond on a moment's notice.
During an emergencies, we come together as a family, as an emergency response and coordination family, to make sure that we are meeting some of the main missions: protect life, property, and the environment.
The recent quakes in Ridgecrest were a reminder of how critical their work is. This situation room at the Emergency Operations Center in East Los Angeles is the nexus of response for Los Angeles County during a disaster.
This is going to be a go room that when we're actually activated, about over 150 people will be working here on 24/7 shifts. This in a way is sort of a brain. It's going to coordinate intelligence, and it's also going to deploy and execute the coordination of resources that are going to go out and aid local cities who are in turn responding to emergencies during a large-scale disaster.
The Office of Emergency Management has responsibility for planning, responding to, and recovering from a large-scale disaster. It's here where representatives from federal, state, and county agencies will be stationed to lead response and recovery efforts in partnership with first responder agencies and private partners.
For example, sheriff, fire, public works, animal care and control. That's just a little taste of all the different county departments and agencies that, again, come together as a family to make sure that we're coordinating resources and coordinating response, and also later recovery activities to help people deal with emergencies and then recover from them later. The last time it was activated was for the Woolsey fire. That was in November of 2018. We have 3 activation levels, with 1 being the highest, 2 being medium, 3 being the lowest level. We were at a level 2 at that time.
This facility was built to withstand large disasters and includes sophisticated communications towers and backup generators. While this is a state-of-the-art facility, everyone can do their part to prepare for a disaster and manage their own family emergency operation, because resources will be strained. The County of Los Angeles created this emergency survival guide in 15 languages. It has over 100 pages of emergency preparedness tips, and it's available for free. The Office of Emergency Management also provides ongoing training for county department emergency coordinators.
Everyone has an important role that they're fulfilling to make sure that we're meeting those central missions.
And today we'd like to welcome Los Angeles County's new director of the Office of Emergency Management, Kevin McGowan. Kevin, welcome to LA County Close-Up.
Thank you, Naibi.
My first question, from earthquakes to wildfires, LA County is pretty prone to lively disasters. So why would anyone want your job?
Why wouldn't you want this job? It's an exciting, awesome opportunity to be a part of a great team that gets to do the most good when things are most important during a disaster.
And what do you think has most prepared you for this line of work?
My preparation started a long time ago through school, but I recently had experiences when I was the director of emergency management in Ventura County, which afforded me the opportunity to provide a lot of practice during real incidents and disasters. But this has been an important part of my life for a long time, and it's really been a great opportunity.
Do you see major differences in the way you approached your job in Ventura County as opposed to how you're going to approach your job here in LA County?
There are substantial differences just because of the size and complexity of Los Angeles County, but the principles and tenets of emergency management are the same and applicable regardless of the environment that you're working in. It's really just finding that fine-tuned art of how do you translate that in different environments successfully, and Los Angeles County is going to provide a unique opportunity to do that.
And Los Angeles County, the biggest county in the nation, how do you assess how residents are prepared for an emergency, whether it be an earthquake or any other type of disaster?
Los Angeles County really isn't any different than anywhere else in our country, where we really need to improve in our readiness and the ability for families and individuals to be self-sufficient when the chips are down and they're really relying on themselves for that first window of time. And so in LA County, we definitely face that challenge of making sure that our residents are prepared and self-sufficient.
And do you think these recent quakes were a wake-up call?
Whenever we have a disaster or an event that we can feel, it's palpable and we can touch it, it's always beneficial because it comes to the forefront. It reminds everyone that we do live in a dynamic county that faces quite a bit of hazards, whether they're wildfires, floods, tsunami, earthquake, and it prompts people to make that investment and take that time to become prepared.
And we know that LA County is very vibrant. There's a lot going on here. So how do people, or what advice would you give to residents that are balancing their lives and also planning and preparing for a potential disaster?
The first thing we would encourage people to do is make the investment in just striking up that conversation with family and friends. What would you do if something were to happen? What's important to you? What do you need? Depending on your conditions in life, where you work, where people go to school, making those plans on how to keep in contact when a disaster occurs, where you're going to meet up, and then what are those critical resources you're going to need in those first few days that might not be available that you would normally be able to get when businesses are open.
And I understand that LA County created a guidebook that's free that can help you with tips in case of an emergency.
So the Los Angeles County Emergency Survival Guide is a great product for you to become informed about the hazards that we face, but then also steps that you can take to become prepared. And it's translated in multiple languages. It's available both in hard copy. You can call 211 and they'll mail it to you, or you can visit the Los Angeles County website /emergency, so lacounty.gov/emergency to get an electronic version.
Thank you so much. County leaders joined Caltech seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones at a recent forum to discuss the Ridgecrest quakes and urge residents to be prepared. Let's listen.
What's the most important message when you get the real strong shaking, not what the LA got this last week? We need to be ready to recognize that it's going to be very difficult to get outside help in. The most important thing you can do is help yourself and help your neighbor. You know, the research is really quite clear that the best chance of a community recovering from a natural disaster is in a community where people are connected to each other. And that's sometimes considered a challenge here in the LA area, isn't it? The most important thing you can do, sure, have your own go kit, do your own structural mitigation, but go talk to your neighbor about it. Go talk to your church about it. Go talk to your kid's school about it. Because if we can do it together, then we have a much better chance of having a community that'll still be here after the earthquake.
And Kevin, people tend to know their neighbors, but she's referring to broader connections. How do you establish that, especially for people such as the elderly who tend to be more isolated?
So resilience in our community is going to be critical and help us recover fast from a disaster. And what we're talking about when we talk about this community involvement is really having these strong social fabrics and social networks in place. Mm-hmm. And you can do that by joining different organizations, so community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and then just neighbors helping neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. So your next door neighbor, striking up that conversation and having that conversation about what they would do, what you might need to help them with.
Right. And LA County is known for their vast amount of freeways and highways. And a lot of the concern is how are mutual aid agencies going to come into LA County should a disaster strike?
Yeah, so by definition, a disaster really exploits all of your resources and it overwhelms your system. So mutual aid becomes an important part in effectively responding to a disaster. And we're fortunate in California to have an amazing mutual aid system and then to rely on the national system. But it takes time to mobilize those resources. So it's important for people to have self-sufficiency and survivability in those first few days.
What should people know about surviving an earthquake?
So the number one priority is your safety of yourself and your family. So drop, cover, and hold is an important first step in surviving that earthquake. And then once the shaking stops, you can evaluate the conditions in the environment that you're in to take those next steps.
Right, and there's some myths as well that we should debunk.
So first myth is to run and leave that environment, and you can't escape an earthquake. It's going to be everywhere. So you drop, cover, and hold, and then reassess the situation once the shaking is stopped.
Anything else people should have at home to be prepared for a disaster?
So building off of those concepts of self-sufficiency and preparedness and having a communications plan, a couple of basic items would be an AM/FM radio. An earthquake's going to impact our infrastructure and the ability for our communication systems, but radio tends to be very reliable, and so our ability to contact you and get you the information you need is going to be predominantly on radio.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing all that valuable information, and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
Remember, preparedness starts with a plan to keep you and your loved ones safe. Let's take a look at how to create a basic emergency kit.
Hi, I'm Helen Chavez, Associate Director with the Los Angeles County Office of Emergency Management. What we have in front of us here today is the most important things that should go into your go bag, your emergency kit, in case there's any kind of an emergency or disaster, like the recent earthquakes that we just experienced here in Southern California. We're going to start looking at these items one by one, starting with this one, which is just a generic looking backpack. Really important item to have by your bedside, in your car, in your vehicle when you're commuting to work, and also one wherever your workplace is. In here, you're going to store some pretty important items. For example, over here you have water. That's one of the most important essential items after an earthquake or any type of a disaster, lack of water. You need at least 1 gallon per person per day for a minimum of at least a week. Over here, there's another group of items basically looking at light, and there may be electrical outages. So you want to make sure that you can find your way in the dark. You have here, for example, this is a battery-operated a flashlight. It also serves as an AM/FM radio. Real critical to stay in the know. After an emergency like an earthquake, you want to know what just happened, what should I do next? So even having an old school type of a radio, this is a crank operated one, is really important so that you get the information from authorities and other trusted sources and you know what to do next. Over here, some other life-saving items. Of course, you recognize this one, a cell phone. This has life-saving capabilities. This is how you're going to communicate with loved ones, and you're going to ask for help by dialing 911 if it's truly a critical life safety issue. The old school way, again, if you're calling for help, you happen to be trapped somewhere, your vocal cords are going to wear out after a while. So having a whistle is a really critical element so that you can go ahead and ask for help. And this is a really important companion item that goes hand in hand with your cell phone, a charger. So this cell phone isn't going to work once the battery runs out, and you're going to lose battery power if there's cuts in electricity. So having an extra charger for your cell phone is a really critical item to have in your go bag. Next over here, this is an emergency, it's a supply kit. It has different things like bandages, first aid items. This is gonna go in your backpack as well. And over here you have some items in case there's damage at home. This is an important one. This is a gas safety shutoff wrench, but you're only gonna use this if you smell gas or you hear or you have a reasonable suspicion to think that there is some sort of a gas leak at home. If you prematurely use this item, then you might suffer an interruption in gas service for quite a while. So use this one with good judgment. And finally, you have some masking tape. This, of course, for any type of triage or injury, you can use that. And many times there's debris in your home. Things have fallen, things have crashed down around you. You want to remove some of the debris. So having some safety gloves and also a good helmet and some goggles are going to be good items in terms of making sure that you don't hurt yourself and that you are safe in your home afterwards as you're inspecting for damage. I know that this is a lot of information to take in, but thankfully the county has a free resource available to you, the LA County Emergency Survival Guide. Over 100 pages of helpful information for any type of hazard, whether it's an earthquake, flood, or anything else that can impact our quality of life. You can get this by dialing 211, ask for a free copy to be mailed to you, or it's available in 15 different languages also online. You can download a copy by going to lacounty.gov/emergency.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on LA County Close Up.